They're just now being created.
There's a lot of, for example, discussion in the media that Bitcoin, it's not so interesting, but blockchain, this is the real innovation. But Bitcoin is what makes blockchain trustless and permissionless because it's the economical incentives that keeps a network decentralized. So Libra doesn't have a token, IBM, they don't have a token because it's private network. It's just between trusted parties. There's no innovation there. It's like it's like a database with people that already trust each other. If you want to create a network that is completely open, that has a network effect, that can grow as the internet grew, and as Alex mentioned, they essentially won the internet, the closed internet, you have to have economical incentive to keep it decentralized, and this is what Bitcoin is for, this is what the Orbs token is for, and I think that is what is unique about these startups. And enterprises, they can't create these tokens because of the regulatory burden that it will bring on top of them.
Okay, so now we're running out of time.
Thank you very much.
마지막 질문 하나만 더 하고 이제 마무리하겠습니다. Last one.
일단은 이제 블록체인이라고 하면 이제 분산 원장이잖아요. 근데 모든 정보를 다 이제 분산 원장에 올릴 수가 없는데 블록체인이 사용된다고 하면 아까 언급하셨듯이 이제 정부나 아니면 큰 기업에서 사용될 거라고 했고 그리고 그런 정보들이 모든 정보들이 이제 분산 원장에 올릴 수 없다고 봐요. 그래서 분명히 이제 프라이빗한 데이터라거나 아니면 좀 이제 치명적인 데이터 같은 것들이 이제 분명히 올라가야 될 텐데 그런 부분들은 어떻게 프라이빗하게 유지될 거고 이제 그런 부분들이 이제 오브스는 어떤 식으로 이제 해결하려고 하는 건지 이 부분이 좀 궁금합니다.
So basically, blockchain is distributed ledger. So if the mass adoption comes, maybe some government or big company will gonna use it, but they cannot put all the data on the blockchain, and there are some private information. So how Orbs is gonna solve that problem?
So first of all, there are some technologies that now emerging to solve privacy, like zero knowledge proof, Zcash, and it's still quite expensive, but I think over time it become more and more usable. Israel is one of the leaders in the space of creating private transactions, on-chain transactions. And obviously there's also some off-chain solution that are state channels, so two parties that trust each other. They can do a lot of activity between them and just broadcast the settlement transaction and not what's everything that is going on a daily basis. But from our experience, what we've seen is that when you really look at the use cases that blockchain is applicable for, a lot of the times you start to understand that it's actually the use cases that the information is public and transparent, and then people can start building on top of it because there is a source of truth. So many times, if what you care about is privacy in the business world from an application perspective, not necessarily you should use a blockchain. And I will give you an example just from a regulatory perspective. Let's say you have a private blockchain that is very private, because this is what the enterprise world cares about, the privacy, and it's 20 different companies inside this network. What we need to understand is two things. One is that usually the companies inside the consortium, they don't trust each other to showcase all of this information, so they have the same problem also within private networks. Secondly, even if they're okay with sharing this data, from a regulatory perspective, somebody outside of the network can say, look, regulator, there's 20 companies that are colluding between themselves and controlling prices or whatever thing. We want to see what's going on there. They're colluding. So just from a regulatory perspective and antitrust perspective, a lot of these private networks, I think, will have to showcase a lot of the activities inside these private consortiums. So again, from our experience looking at many different use cases, a lot of what the enterprise world is doing today doesn't need a blockchain to do that. But where we actually see real use cases is mostly where the information is public and auditable. So we think there's three kind of things that blockchain can give guarantees. One, it's data, so the data is authentic. Two, on the algorithmic level, how is the data created by the algorithm? And thirdly, on the governance, what are the rules, how are they changed? These are the three levels of truth that blockchain can give guarantees. So if you look about Bitcoin, why is Bitcoin so unique and so powerful? Because it has these three guarantees the truth. Every transaction is public, everybody can see it. The network is completely forkable. If I'm not happy with the Bitcoin network, I can fork it. Not just the code, which is open source, but all of the data. So Bitcoin Cash is a complete fork of the Bitcoin network, which creates an even more competitive ecosystem. And the third thing is that everybody knows the rules, everybody knows how it's changed, 51%, longest chain attack. So actually Bitcoin is so powerful and it's such a killer use case for blockchain technology because everything is transparent and auditable and public and the governance and so on. So a lot of the use cases that today we hear that are being applied to blockchain, I think you don't really need a blockchain there. They rely on trust. You can run it on a centralized database between parties.
So, and I think the math is right now we're creating more data in 6 months now than all the data that was created in the history of mankind. That's how fast everything is moving on the data side, right? So, and it's moving faster and faster because we're producing 4K movies and every picture is taken in HD. My kids just run things 24 hours a day, the cameras. I mean, they're just not, right, and everything is uploaded to the cloud and so on. So that entire network, the internet, the entire network, is actually not connected in any way to the blockchain. You show me one connection between the blockchain and the internet. It's two different worlds, right? And what we're missing are really bridges. With zero proof is a perfect example. If you could create a zero proof system that enable you to validate that something is real. Here's a picture of Donald Trump and whatever, doing something good, you know, for change. You know, prove it, right? How do you prove it from a zero proof standpoint that this is authentic and it's not something that got fabricated and misplaced and brought to you by the Russians or whatever, right? That is the problem we're having. That you can go on any network on the internet and you don't know if it's real or if it's not real, right? And that's what the blockchain is supposed to deliver. It's supposed to deliver that truth, right? So one of the killer apps that I think will happen is the ability to use those networks, to bridge those networks between the world that we live in and this blockchain world that really no one understands. Most people don't understand what that is. Like I was saying, you know, it's a tank, right? What do you need a tank for, right? When there's war, you need a tank. That's just here. When you need to verify that something is real, you need to be able to go and ask for that zero proof. To say, is this image really original? Was it created by this camera that said, here's my private key and I actually generated every pixel on this image, right? Things like that we're not there yet. I mean, we might be 5 or 10 years away from it. But I think we're going to move to a world where everything is going to everything in the digital world is going to have to be validated through zero proof or other type of mechanisms on a public blockchain that is running just for that audit trail function, right? Which again, we're not there yet. I just invented a new business. Maybe you can build it.
I just give you an example why I say not everything needs to be on a blockchain. Take an example, DocuSign. DocuSign is a very popular company that enables to sign documents online. So they pay about $50 million a year to Amazon to post all of these different documents. So if I'm corresponding with somebody and let's say we send a draft or different version that are not even signed, why would I want to store multiple copies on a blockchain that is very expensive and so on? I would want to store on a blockchain just a signed contract to make it immutable. So Amazon can't change it, DocuSign can't change it. It's a much stronger guarantee. So about 5% from the cloud cost of DocuSign, I think, will be on top of a blockchain because it adds much better guarantees to the different users that are using it, that nobody can change the contract once it's signed. But the rest of the 95%, it's okay if it's on a centralized database. Like, I don't care if an unsigned document is being manipulated or something like that. You know, it's not the end result. in the case of Uber, I don't care that a centralized database does the matching engine between the driver and the taxi. You know, having this engine peer-to-peer that different drivers are doing similar tasks to try to own the user creates such complexity and cost that sometimes a centralized database is much better. But there are things that I do care about Uber opening up, like governance and inclusion in the decision process and empowering the drivers. And I think that would be good for drivers to also make a ride-sharing app even more competitive. So the way we look at it, we see blockchain is a database. For a lot of use cases, a centralized database is better because it's faster, cheaper, private. But there are some use cases that 5% that blockchain is the right way to solve these problems. Like elections, for example. You know, India is running the biggest election in the world. They just finished $800 million. 800 million users just voted with their thumb in India on the election. It's all digital in India. But where is this information stored? It's on one database that the Indian government is using a third party, a private company. This is super scary. Having the election of a country on a database owned by a third party to audit, and I don't know if there's corruptions or not corruptions. You want this to be public, auditable, much higher level of trust and guarantees. But again, the Uber example, yeah, I'm okay. I don't know, they have employees arrangement in this cafe. It doesn't need to be decentralized, it could be centralized. So it's really this balance between where do you need to use the TAM and where you don't.
네, 저도 정신없이 계속 들었는데 참 좋은 말들이었는데요. 일단 시간 관계상 여기까지 마치고요. 또 질문 있으신 분들은 저희